Do what thou will be the whole piece of law.
According to my calculations, we should be exactly where we're supposed to be. This is another one of those things where it's just so dark. Why is it so dark in here? Let's see. No. My controls tell me we're right where we're supposed to be. Actually, consulting them in this area might have been a bad idea. Okay, I'll say it. Like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my growth. It really helps me get more eyes on my content. I have neglected to mention it a lot, and it has been hurting me very badly. I will read all of your comments. It is a joy to read, and any video that gets a lot of comments, or even just one comment, you offer one comment to me, Worm Speaker, however you want to say it, it helps a lot. It helps me get more eyes on my stuff, and it makes me feel better. Okay, is that what you wanted to hear? Let's keep looking. But let me see. There is a document here. But is it what I want? I don't know if this is one of those pieces of information we're supposed to be searching for. I don't know if this is one we're just going to come across on accident. But this place in the archives feels a lot more strange. Like, this isn't even a document. I can just put my hand up against the glass, and it feels like I'm getting it beamed into my head. Well, let's see what this message has to say. It might illuminate us on where we are. Gangster Computer God Worldwide Secret Containment Policy, made possible solely by Worldwide Computer God Frankenstein Controls, especially Lifelong Constant Threshold Brainwash Radio. Quiet and motionless, I can slightly hear it. Repeatedly, this has saved my life on the street. Now, this is where the Computer God's meddling gets a little odd. Because Francis was never implanted, so how am I gaining one of his rants from this glass? Normally it's something that I have to pull out of an archive or something, but it feels like I'm connecting on a deeper level, almost as if... No. I'm going to dismiss that until we get more information. It feels like I've hit a well of knowledge. I'm going to keep going. I don't want to lose this rare opportunity. 4 billion worldwide population, all living, have a Computer God containment policy, Brain Bank Brain, a real brain in the Brain Bank cities on the far side of the moon we never see. Oh no. If we're where I think we are, and I do think, I'm going to focus, see if I can bring the lights on. There we go. It's even worse than I had imagined. We are on the moon. That's where we've been this whole time. The archive is on the moon, where the Computer God lays. The moon that was artificially constructed, and it moves around the Earth with its nucleonic power source. We finally made it to the brain bank on the far side. I might be able to finally find his brain like I've wanted to this whole time. You might be able to find yours if you look around. I might be able to find mine too, but it's probably too small for me to even bother looking for. So, if my hypothesis is correct, this is either, first of all, his brain, which shouldn't be up here because he was never implanted, or this is a Computer God replicant of his brain that contains merely a rant or two, most likely incomplete, but I believe the Computer God could read his thoughts. It might be confirmed somewhere else in the archives, but for now, this information well is too good to pass up. If you want to look for your brain, keep going, but listen, this is going to be far more interesting than the previous rants you've signed up for. Primarily based on your lifelong Frankenstein radio controls, especially your EyeSight TV, sight and sound recorded by your brain, your moon brain, on the Computer God activates your Frankenstein Threshold Brainwash Radio, lifelong, inculcating conformist propaganda, even frightening you and mixing you up, and the usual, don't worry about it. For your setbacks, mistakes, even when you receive deadly injuries, this is the Worldwide Computer God Secret Containment Policy. I know it. I know that's what you heard when I was trying to take your controls out, or at least disable them. Remember that don't worry about it? That is apparently something that we all receive. You ever seen those people on the street and you think, how are they still living their lives in a way that is contiguous to normal human function, despite that situation that they're in? They may be destitute on the street, but they just hear this, don't worry about it, it will be okay. And when Francis was on the streets, he could... This part always makes me crack up, because we can't hear it, right? It sounds insane to us, because we don't have the purity of mind that Francis had. This constant threshold brainwash radio. It apparently makes a slight noise if you stand still and focus on it. You know, for us, we may call that tinnitus. We're too in tune with what the computer god has given us. But for Francis, this is a daily occurrence. He's not in the computer god collective unconscious. This is something he has to focus on. And since these are evil agents of the computer god, this has saved his life just because he's been able to detect these frequencies. And it really just lets you know how horrible these Frankenstein controls are. He keeps repeating it over and over, but sometimes I wonder if the computer god has control over the media. You know, if Francis C. Deck had been able to see, you know, the modern media complex about, or mainstream media just being propaganda at some point. I mean, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, personally, I'm on the computer god side of the aisle, you know? I don't know if you could hear that, but that was me tapping on my controls. They protrude slightly from my head at some points. I don't know if you looked at the diagram. I think I still have it. Yeah, it protrudes a little bit under the skull here, you see. The rest of it is just inlaid throughout the blood-brain barrier when they take out the skull cap to implant these controls, but we'll get into that later. As for now, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Worldwide, as a Frankenstein slave, usually at night, you go to a nearby hospital, or camouflage miniature hospital van trucks. You strip naked, lie on the operating table which slides into the sealed computer god robot operating cabinet. Intravenous tubes are connected. The slimy, vicious, Jewish doctor simply pushes the starting button, based on your computer god brain on the moon, which records process on your systematic butchery. Your butchery is continued, exactly, systematically. The computer god operating cabinet has many robot arms, with electrical and laser beam knife robot arms, with fly-eye TV cameras watching your whole body. Every part of you is monitored, even through your Frankenstein controls. Synthetic blood, synthetic instant sealing flesh and skin, even synthetic electrical heartbeats. To keep you alive are some of the unbelievable computer god instant plastic surgery secrets. Trademark. You are the highest, most intelligent electrical machine in the universe. Oh, here's another thing you probably don't remember. So this is how you got these in the first place. You were kidnapped, you were stuck into a hospital or taken to one of these trucks, and you were put in this operating cabinet. Now, you're hooked up to, I assume, the entire hospital, you know, plasma, stuff like that. I think Francis is just limited by his medical knowledge in this part. And someone presses a button, and it is an automatic process that installed these controls, and he mainly describes the cabinet, and it sounds very terrifying to someone who is, well, you're probably sedated at this point, mainly because you'll have the controls in your head, which are gonna deafen the, you know, feelings of panic. Remember, don't worry about it, it'll be okay, even when you receive deadly injuries. And these tiny little robot arms, I feel there are a ton of them throughout this cabinet, able to access every part of your body. It can do all of these surgeries effectively on its own. It doesn't need to cauterize because lasers cauterize the wound, and the computer god can watch this surgery through its TV cameras, which are also fly-eyed. I don't know if that is a benefit or a hindrance to the computer god, because I feel like that's a lot of null knowledge that it's not going to use. But I mean, to be fair, I'm not an all-seeing god computer. And also, if you were to ever have a danger of dying during this procedure, it basically seems like the computer god has an infinite supply of synthetic body parts. If you ever, you know, flatline, it will bring you back to consciousness, and it will bring you back to functioning body with this synthetic heartbeat or this skin that instantly seals, and all this artificial blood if you lose too much. And all of these are the computer god instant plastic surgery secrets, which apparently the computer god is in good enough with the US government to file a trademark and actually succeed. So that should show you how deep the corruption really goes. And I feel like Francis in the modern day would have a lot of problems functioning, especially with the rise of AI. Not that it's anywhere near where the computer god is. In fact, I wonder how the computer god would react to an AI scenario. You know, people always talk about the Terminator or, you know, Rocco's Basilisk, and they point to these as the fears of AI. But how would the computer god react to that? Do you think the computer god would allow a rival AI intelligence, or do you think humans are creating the computer god right now? Are we just the ancient Slovenes? Obviously not, but according to the Francis C. Deck canon. But I'm straying a little bit off. I'm putting my tinfoil hat on. And what if humanity right now is creating its own computer god? Wouldn't that be crazy? I feel like there's more important concepts in this. We need to get to it. I don't want to wait too long. Keep searching if you want, but I'm going to keep going.
The inevitability of gradualness. Usually in a few years you are made string bean thin, or grotesquely deformed, crippled, and ugly, or even made over 1 foot shorter or 1 foot taller as the computer god sees fit. Virtually all of the important instant plastic surgery is done to you inside of the computer god sealed robot operating cabinet. Even unbelievable, impossible plastic surgery operations, all impossible for even dozens of vicious kosher doctors working around the clock for weeks. The computer god sealed robot arm operating cabinet can perform all of the above impossible plastic surgery operations overnight, even dwarfing you by over a foot, or increasing your height by 2 feet. This is made possible because Computer God Robot Operating Cabinet imitates your micro-miniature electrical current intelligence system in your body. It even duplicates the micro-miniature electrical currents that soften your broken bones to create mending of them, and then create stress, either compressing the bones, thereby shortening them, or stress to make the bones grow longer.
Okay. So here's where I've been kicking down to the inevitability of gradualness. I guess that's what we're going to have to talk about now. So the inevitability of gradualness is, he's alluded to earlier, is all people are made dead or useless by age 70. And this is where he really shows you what that means. Inside of this computer god operating cabinet, it will proceed with these surgeries on you. And all of these surgeries are cosmetic in nature. All of what you know as aging, quote unquote, is fake to Francis E. Deck. All of this is fake. You know, you get shorter as you get older. That means it's the computer god surgery. You know, you had that growth spurt in the middle of nowhere in your 20s or maybe your 30s, you know, computer god surgery, because at night when you weren't looking, the computer god has taken you to this cabinet and done all these surgeries on you to perform you to the computer god's grand design. Do you know how many people would like pay for this? Do you know how many people would go to the computer god and say like, make me shorter, you know, or make me taller, because it's part of their like life vision? Because height surgeries are some of the hardest things to do in modern medicine. Do you know how many people would pay for easy, cheap, convenient, and safe cosmetic operations? I feel like I'm going to say this again, because I feel like this well of knowledge is just going to go more into how the computer god alters you. And I feel I'm going to say at every stage of the process, people would pay so much money for this, but the computer god does it for free. I mean, think about that. It can hijack your brain's nervous system. Well, it's already hijacked your brain, but it can hijack your body's nervous system. It can fire neurons. It's effectively its own painkiller because it can just dull certain senses or bring up other ones. This is so fascinating. Let's keep going.
Spring 1984. Mr. Deck, lifelong would-be computer doctor and printer, insight to the worldwide computer god stratified closed society, perfected by hospital birth, making possible lifelong Frankenstein controls, and lifelong hampering human defects, containment policy, hospital birth, lifelong gifts, example, deformed, crippled, slow, pox, hives, warts, moles, blindness, deafness, poor vision, etc. Kosher containment policy work, quote-unquote, good doctors, secret health example, cataract, rheumatism, weak heart, damaged vision, epilepsy, fainting spells, paralysis, loss of memory, trembling, gout, diabetes, many diseases.
It's another one of those little nuggets of insight that we get into Francis's life, because he went to be a lawyer, but it sounds like he wants to be a doctor or like a newspaper writer because of just that little line of the lifelong would-be doctor and printer. And I feel like this also, again, comes from a real deep place of personal malice. I don't know if it was, you know, the Catholic school he attended. I don't know if it was his parents. I don't know what factor in his life brought him to actually go to be a lawyer, because he went for the arts, which is kind of antithetical to being a doctor. But also, we don't know at what point in his life he decided to be a lawyer rather than a doctor. But he then goes into, you know, all of these diseases that you can just get from being born, effectively. This is how the computer god maintains its closed society, because it, you know, cripples people from birth. It gives people deformities. It gives them all these birth diseases, like, you know, people can be born blind or have poor vision or deaf, or, you know, you can get Alzheimer's later in life. You can have a weak heart, you know, diabetes, all of these things that are caused from birth or later in life. This is how the computer god influences society, and this is why it's so important that you're pure from Frankenstein controls like he is, because once you have them, you're effectively sentenced to the computer god's grand design. You're being deprived of agency in your body, which I feel ties back to the idea that the computer god is just all that is unseen because you can't see what causes aging, right? Like you can see the sun like wrinkles and sunburns your skin, but that's not direct. It's not like a direct cause and effect. You know, you touch your hand to a hot stove, oh, it burns your hand. You're like, it burns. You see it go red and, you know, do all that burn stuff. Like that's cause and effect. But aging takes place over a protracted amount of years, and it takes so long that it's effectively an unseen force. And I feel that's what Francis C. Deck is trying to harness in this rant. Let's keep diving deeper into this well of knowledge. I'm really liking this one.
The worldwide, unbelievable, lowest deadly gangster, kosher, bosher, vicious, quote-unquote, medical profession. Worldwide, unbelievable, instant plastic surgery, butchery of the body and brain, especially the face. Wipe-on hormones and laser beam surgery causing instant ugly deep wrinkles, scars, age spots, arthritis, freckles, blemishes, pimples, red, brown, black, or even sick white face and body. Worldwide, dark-colored male sex organs to brainwash inferior female brain for overall plan. Intermarry with black people. Total graying and balding, even hairy body and furry body. Mustached, bearded women, even wipe on synthetic hormones causing cancerous growths, bloating, swelling, deformed, big pickle nose, bulldog hanging cheeks and jowls. From teenage gradual wipe on yellowing, browning and blackening of teeth, and instant grinding and acids leaving hollow brown stumps, so vocal cords are made raspy, aged, creating a wrinkled, ugly, gargoylic clown booze face worldwide population by age 70, deformed, crippled, weak, and brain damaged, new, senile, lingering for the inevitability of gradualness, extermination. For your only hope for a future, do you know one word of pray for me, Francis E. Deck?
Well, do you? Do you know one word of pray for me, Francis E. Deck? I didn't make a speech error. That is just how it's written. Or, well, how it was encoded into this brain. I don't know if he actually wrote it like that. No, consulting the original encoding, it looks like this is how it's supposed to be. But more of what I was talking about, I'm not going to repeat myself too much, I hope. But all of this is just connection back to the unseen. All of these things that the computer god does is unseen things. Aging is just surgery done to your face to make you ugly. And he also throws in the little bit of racism there. I thought we were going to be able to escape it, but no. He gives the 4chan, like, oh, people are intermarrying with... It's so hard to say. People are intermarrying with the other races, race mixing bad, because their genitals are superior. I don't know, Francis, seems like a little bit of insecurity on your part, but, it's just so frustrating, because you think he's not going to be racist, and then it just comes out of nowhere. Also going to mention again, do you know how many people would pay, like, especially furries in general, or like people who are, I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, but I remember, whether it be real or fake or imagined, like, transracial people, you know, if you could just change your skin color because the computer god wanted you to. Isn't that crazy? Do you know how many people would just pay for a service like that? Like furries for the furry skin, or like extra hair, or you could reverse bald. Like, okay, the computer god explicitly causes balding, but it also causes extreme hair growth. Do you know how many people would like pay for some of these services, and the computer god does it for free? Anyway, let's continue.
Computer god, computerized brain thinking, sealed robot, operating arm surgery cabinet machine, removal of the most frontal command lobe of the brain, gradually during lifetime and overnight, in all insane asylums after computer god kosher bosher 1 month probation period, creating helpless, hopeless computer god Frankenstein earphone radio, parroting puppet brainless slaves, resulting in millions of hopeless, helpless, homeless derelicts in all of USA-lum cities and Soviet slave work camps. Not only the hangman rope deadly gangster parroting puppet scum on top know this top medical secret, even worse, deadly gangster Jewish disease. From deaf Ronnie Reagan to USSR Gorbachev know this oy vey computer god containment policy, parentheses, top secret. Eventual brain lobotomization of the entire world population for the worldwide deadly gangster communist computer god's overall plan. An ideal worldwide population of light-skinned, low, hopeless and helpless mixed race people. The communist black wave of the future.
Once again, also a lot to unpack, but we're gonna do it progressively. First of all, the gradual removal of the command lobe of the brain over a lifetime is just his way of trying to compensate. He gets so close because he wants to find a reason why people are getting more impaired over time. Because it seems that Francis E. Deck believes that he doesn't age, and it's just all the computer god's fault, like natural aging doesn't exist. So he's trying to figure out why old people lose their executive function. And the frontal lobe is actually responsible for executive function. It's a rare time when I don't know if Francis E. Deck is just getting lucky, or he actually knows brain science. But also, something that set off my brain is that he had a 1-month probation period. You remember? In the insane asylums, you get a 1-month probation period. And I just got like the little Akira ping in my head. And it's because he had the 1 month in the prison. Remember when he got released again for some reason? And I just love making the connections. It makes me vibrate intensely. And he kind of brings up some other topical things just on accident, because you get the feeling that he's noticing things, but he doesn't know how to compute them. First of all, he hates Ronald Reagan, which I never really had a strong opinion on the guy. I mean, I know a lot of people hate him for different reasons. You know, people on the right are like, oh man, he banned all my fully automatic weapons, and it makes it really hard to get certain rifles. Like the SVD, I would really like an SVD. I would love one, but no, it got banned in 1987 with all the other things because of its trigger mechanism being super similar to the AK, so it can't be imported anymore. But that's a separate thing. And people on the left are like, trickle-down economics doesn't work, both of which are equally valid complaints about Ronald Reagan. My main beef with Ronald Reagan is that whenever I go to Ronald Reagan Airport in DC, I've never had a good time. Literally no other flight has left on time. I'm looking at you, American Airlines. You have screwed me over so many times. Oh man, you couldn't hold the plane for 10 minutes because I had a no refunded ticket and I had to drive 6 hours back to my home. No, I can't believe you, American Airlines. You're a computer god puppet airline. I will never accept that you're real. Anyway, he also throws Gorbachev under the bus, which is completely understandable, you know, leader of the USSR. It also gives us a time frame as to when this rant was written, because Gorbachev at least had to be president and Reagan also had to be at least president. He's also noticing the pattern of, the United States always seems to support Israel a lot, isn't that weird? And he calls it like Jerusalem, but the USA is capitalized. I thought that was cute. The last thing, reiterating the computer god's ultimate plan, the communist black wave of the future, which is what's been stated in previous videos. I don't want to double down, triple down on Francis E. Deck's racism again, because I don't know if the computer god is hearing me talk about these things and repressing the truth from the airwaves, but I'd rather not. You know what the computer god's ultimate plan is. If not, look at the playlist. Look at the picture. I think I missed that in the last one. I know some people are probably going to be pretty upset about that. Look at the picture. There you go. But overall, this rant is probably the second most well-known and the most enlightening as to what the computer god's plan is. It's very succinct. I feel it pairs very well with the Master Race Frankenstein radio controls, because the first one sets you up onto what the computer god is going to do to you, and then the second is how the computer god is going to exploit you once it has gotten these controls into your head. And Francis, again, is just very angry, mainly because once again, he asks, for prayer. He asks for aid. He doesn't say, oh, please donate money or a manual typewriter to me, Francis E. Deck. He says, donate a prayer. He just says, pray for me, your only hope for a future, which is kind of odd because, prayer is associated with religion and he hates Catholics, but maybe he's just like an astronist and astronist prayer is different. No, not astronist. Astrocist. Maybe astrocist prayer is different. I don't know. But I feel like there's at least one more inlay of information here. I wonder what this one is called. The metric system? The evil metric system conspiracy? What? Okay, I guess this is gonna be about how the computer god invented the metric system. Let's see.
The communist gangster computer god worldwide systematic destruction of all standards and values, parentheses, and the inevitability of gradualness. The computer god decrees by parroting puppet government edict upon his unsuspecting brainwashed population the new centigrade and metric measurement systems. It is computer god predetermined, planned, wanton, worldwide degenerative, ridiculous confusion and destruction of all standards and values toward one world communism, for the overall plan, namely eternal Frankenstein living death slavery to explore and control the entire universe by the computer god.
He is not beating the average American allegations. I'm sure you've seen it. The Europeans who point to Americans and are like, the Americans don't know geography. The Americans don't know the true system of measurement, the metric system. And you look at Francis E. Deck and it's just completely true. Because he's like, oh yeah, the Slovenes conquered the entire world. The Slavano-Polish, I guess, despite being like less than 1% of the world's entire landmass, well, the Slovenes anyway, it's not that he just doesn't know what's going on. He then says, oh yes, the imposement of the metric system on America, which by the way still hasn't happened year to date. He says this is the computer god trying to degenerate the US, even though he kind of already doesn't like the US, and he is noticing what the US's power structure kind of is. He says this is going to confuse the United States population, as if, that's the claim that's just reversed, Americans are confused by the metric system, or, Americans can't accept a normal measurement system, they have to have this confusing one that they were brought up with since birth. And he then says, oh yeah, it's also just the wanton destruction of, everything that we hold dear. It's the destruction of the American values if we adopt the metric system. It's going to institute Frankenstein slavery to the entire world. It's following the computer god's plan that that the United States use the metric system, and if we use the metric system, if we adopt this new system of measurement, all is lost. It's just so funny. Mainly because not the sense that like, oh, this being invented by the computer god is weird. Like, yeah, sure. It's just such a weird hill to die on. He picks such a weird thing to fight over. Personally, I would have chosen the destruction of culture into the communist black wave of the future. I would have personally picked that as like, this is the nightest point of worldwide destruction. But I mean, like, it's still kind of happening anyway, if you look at what's happening. But anyway, it's a weird hill to die on. Let's see who's responsible, I suppose.
The computer god first imposed it upon the captive populations of the USSR, who still resist it. Now, in similar gangster police state tactics, with obvious nationwide objection, the computer god bribe-taking fixers, the staged con artist parroting puppet con gangsters, with instant communist gangster computer god television printout promptings to read an enslaved, terrified, unsuspecting population, namely the insidious gangsters, the congressmen, even the tiniest, inferior brain, apoetic, black women that qualify as congresswomen, through the computer god concocted decree, now force these ridiculous and confusing degenerative measurement systems upon the entire United States population.
Okay, I kind of see that I was wrong with the previous interpretation. This is already being imposed on the United States, rather than, oh, this is something that is threatening to be imposed. No. So the starting point is everyone uses imperial, but the Soviet Union and those behind the Iron Curtain had it imposed on them first because they're the communist nations of the world that are most deeply controlled. And then he says, oh, the political apparatus is passing it right now. Like, all these people who you think should qualify to be political leaders aren't actually qualified. And it's, again, he's noticing all of these things that are, important themes in modern United States politics. Like the issues of immigration, he's kind of touching on immigration a little bit. He's saying like, oh, our political leaders are unfit and they're being controlled by unseen forces. And wherever you are on the political spectrum, you can say like, oh, these forces are whatever. He's noticing all of these. It's almost maddening, because if he weren't schizophrenic, he probably could be a great politician. Like, I guess, like the Thomas Massey of his day, I suppose. But no, he just has to be insane, and he has to say, it's the computer. Imagine, right? You're in the halls of Congress. I'm going to paint you a picture. You're in the halls of Congress, and you're a senator from whatever state you're from. And someone fields you the question, like, why are you doing this? Who's behind it all? Like, they say, Senator, if you had to pin the blame on someone, who would that be? I'm putting you in the shoes of Francis E. Deck, Senator of New York, and they ask the question, Senator, you seem to be insinuating a lot of things. What would you say is the force behind this? Give it a name. And then you, as the senator from New York, Francis E. Deck, would say the computer god, and the entire place goes silent. Like, imagine this upset. Imagine all the Twitter posts. Imagine all the memes that would get. If you just, like, went up, like, people are expecting you to say, like, a bunch of different things, like the elites, or, the people who have disproportionate control over everything, of course. and you can pick basically whatever you want to throw in there. But no, you just say the computer god with like full seriousness, and everyone just goes silent, and they have to roll with it. Like, you could just say anything. Like, decorum does not bind you. You could just say, imagine if we put Francis E. Deck in front of the United States Congress or Senate or literally any political body in the entire world, and you say, oh great, speak. What does he say? Like, I just find that fun to imagine, but there's so much more. I don't want to drag this. It's just so good. We've gotten to the ones that I actually just love, because this is what got me into Francis E. Deck. This memory right here. Oh, it's such a random hill to die on, but I love it. I love that he fights for every single inch. Let's see.
The metric measurement system is ridiculously complicated and confusing. It has no small measurements. It has no inches, parentheses, based upon a man's first digit of his thumb. It has no feet measurement, based upon a man's foot, end parentheses. It has no yard measurement, parentheses, based upon a man's arm length. The metric measurement system has nothing to replace these extremely important short measurements. Without the computer god Frankenstein earphone radio, no female, no Ethiopian gifted black people, and no plain black person can understand it. The metric measurement system destroys all values and standards, even all written history and written records, billions upon billions of dollars, completely wasted on degenerative, ridiculous, and confusing changeovers to the metric measurement system.
It's literally the meme where it's like, oh, what is a foot? It's like one extremely specific measurement, and like, oh, what is a centimeter? And then it's like a fraction, like a ridiculously complicated fraction of another hyper-specific measurement. I'll put it up on screen, but this is exactly what he does throughout this entire part. Because he's like, oh, all of these imperial measurements are, first of all, easy to understand. I don't know if you caught up on that, but he throws basically like, oh yeah, these simplistic computer god pawns can't understand it without the Frankenstein controls, which I feel is a little bit of projection on his part. But also what he says is just like completely over the top, because he says the metric system destroys all values and standards, and it destroys all written history. No, it's not historical revisionism. It's not like any of the computer gods' other plots that are doing this. It's the imposement of the metric system, because without the metric system, the entirety of history falls apart. And he's like, oh, billions of dollars are completely wasted on these ridiculous changeover systems. Like, it never happened. He's just noticing that like a bunch of billions of dollars are being wasted on stuff he doesn't care about. It's like he gets torturously close to understanding things, but he just doesn't go over the top. He doesn't get to it. He doesn't want to make any political change. He just says it's like, oh man, it's just because of this one force that I can't control. Like, I don't think it needs to be said. But metric does have small measurements, like, you know, King Henry died drinking chocolate milk. You know, the whole whatever acronym you learned in school. If I get anyone from Europe, because I know my audience is primarily American, so you can understand Francis E. Deck a little better because of the cultural zeitgeist, I hope. But, you know, if you're European, this is like impossible to comprehend, because you look at a map and you see that like, what is it, like 196 out of 198 countries use metric? I don't know, or maybe society has fallen far further than Francis E. Deck would ever guess, because the USSR couldn't fight it for too long and it spread it to Europe. Oh no, how will we ever recover? It's a metric system that's used even in science in the United States, but like we'll never use in another way. We just have to keep measuring things in football fields or other goofy ways of measurement instead of just adopting metric. But I think he still has some things to say on temperature. So let's see.
The computer god concocted centigrade temperature system camouflages the computer god worldwide completely controlled, deadly, extremistic, degenerative synthetic climate and atmosphere. The new world round translucent gaseous envelope, which the computer god manipulates through the countless exactly positioned satellites, the new fake phony stars in the synthetic sky. Unbelievably, the centigrade temperatures vary only a few degrees from season to season, parentheses. Example, from frozen water, ice, to steaming boiling water. It is only 100 standard degrees in the centigrade system. Boiling water on our own present Fahrenheit temperature system is 212 degrees. The computer god degenerating extremistic climate already in 1982 with over 2-foot snow blizzard along with New England coast and the rest of the East Coast with 1 foot of snow blizzard down to the Carolinas during Easter week. During the past winter, over 26 inches of rain in less than 48 hours in the San Francisco Moscow area. Last summer, 100-degree heat in the northwest border stayed in Sahara Desert temperatures for weeks. In the Panhandle area around Texas, each parroting puppet congressman should be awarded a Soviet One World Secret Agent card as a communist secret agent for One World Communism. Parentheses, rewritten in 1982.
A little bit of the reiterating that we had already. First of all, the computer god manufactures Earth's climate. Second of all, they're probably getting away with it if you look at the graphs of temperatures. I mean, even in my home state, it was getting unbelievably hot. Like, we just had that, like, massive heat wave. Remember the massive, like, 90% humidity or, like, 100-degree wet bulb temperature or something like that? Maybe the computer god's winning. Maybe Francis E. Deck was onto something. I don't know. Or maybe it's, a phenomenon that we've already observed. But Francis E. Deck says that the entirety of Earth's climate is manufactured by the computer god. We've been known. Second of all, his main issue with Celsius is that it doesn't have small measurements because, okay, I'm going to out myself as an American. I'm going to side with Francis E. Deck on this one. Not that Celsius is completely broken, but more in the Celsius is for water, Fahrenheit's for people, and then Kelvin is for atoms, and then degrees R is for engineers. So I don't even know if you know what degrees R is, but I found that out because I work in a lab. I found that out from like a little diagram that had Celsius, Kelvin, Fahrenheit, and R on it, and then I had to go look up what degrees R was. So I'm gonna side with Francis E. Deck. You should be using Fahrenheit for like your personal feeling of like the air around you. I completely disagree that it should be thrown out entirely. It's wonderful for science because it's just nice, even numbers. It shows that Francis E. Deck wasn't a scientist and he mainly just used it for his own personal reasons, and I kind of understand that. And then he says like, oh yeah, all the United States con artists that we call congressmen should be awarded with a secret agent card for the Soviet Union because they're all spies trying to implement this plan that the computer god has for the United States. Now, let's see what Francis E. Deck proposes as a solution, if he even has any solutions for this problem.
You can stop this. Complain now before it is too late. Footnote, like congressmen concocted by computer god for overall plan and manipulated for worldwide propaganda of slanted truths and falsehoods, the news media, newspapers, TV, radio, etc. for many, many years solely use computer god instant TV printout promptings on desktops and various disguised even as framed pictures or clocks, etc. They write no printed copy for newspapers, TV, radio, magazines, books, etc. It is virtually all written by the computer god instantly. It is unbelievable, chicanerous, insidious, con artist propaganda for the overall plan. Example, from young Bar, Fly, Rowdy, Shakespeare to present-day Huxley, H.G. Wells, Einstein, Hemingway, etc., and all authors, they are computer god fabrications.
You found your brain yet? If you're still looking, that is. I don't know if you sat to listen or you've gone away to somewhere I can't see. This place is so packed anyway. But what did we learn? I feel like this is kind of an echo of things to come, because if he's writing this in the 80s, which was his nice prime writing time, digitization of media has not really become a thing yet. He mainly says that all media is fabricated, like all of his contemporary authors or past authors are just computer god printouts. Or I guess he's trying to say like history is taking a defined course, mainly because no one writes these things in real time. They're just all printouts from the computer god, like digital archive. He'd have a heart attack to figure out that physical newspapers are going extinct because everything is now just like a digital archive, or you can go to like the New York Times website and get the news for the day. And he's saying this before it is even real, or like a thing that is conceivably possible. He says that all of the present events are fabricated and they're all in these digital archives that are just being printed out to be read and distributed to people just to propagandize the overall plan, even though by his own words everyone's already kind of fallen under the sway of the overall plan and is falling towards this abyss that he sees anyway. But I guess he just has to find more reasons to indoctrinate people. I mean, more propaganda is always better. I don't even want to look at the next paragraph. I feel like there's some trademarked Francisisms in this next one. Let's see how much I have to censor for the computer god to let me through.
The computer god worldwide inevitability of gradualness, namely the systemic destruction of all standards and values for the overall plan, worldwide eternal Frankenstein living death slavery through one world communism, parentheses, top secret code word, end parenthesis, the communist black wave of the future, meaning the worldwide degeneration to an absolute helpless and hopeless simple language mongrel race, vicious, deadly, gangster, parroting, puppet gifted one world communist population. It is the intensified repetition of the fabricated historical crisis syndrome of Computer God for several hundred years, the still unintegrated Hebrew with extremely simple black Slavonic hodgepodge language, namely Yiddish.
Yeah. It's mainly things we already know or have gone over. Reestablishing what the inevitability of gradualness is, kind of linking it more into the communist black wave of the future, you know, the devolution, quote-unquote, of humankind. And here's where he says more explicitly, the Computer God fabricates all of history, and they now have their own language, quote-unquote, if he would even call it a language of Yiddish. Remember, he does the 2 T's thing instead of the 2 D's. I was talking to my friends, and Yiddish came up, and I said, oh yeah, with the 2 T's. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's with 2 D's. I've been brain rotted so bad. The brain rot has gotten to me. Maybe that is the inevitability of gradualness. The Computer God's new overall plan is the degeneration of an entire generation through the communist brain rot of the future. Anyway, let's keep going. I feel like there's more here. This is so meaty. Just, let's get through it. Take a breath. Keep searching, accumulate, re-agglomerate. Let's see.
Worldwide, all of the hangman rope playboy parroting puppet gangster scum on top watch me on Frankenstein eyesight television, waiting for my undetectable extermination. Even the atheist, sodomist, commie, Matonic pope of all of them know that all governments are chicanerous gangster facades of the gangster parroting puppets of the Computer God. There are no foreign policies, only worldwide sinister gangster international conspiracies concocted and manipulated by the Computer God, all for fulfilling the overall plan of worldwide eternal Frankenstein living death slavery to explore and control the entire universe for the Computer God.
It just keeps getting worse. So, tackling another Francisism before it's going to be used, and I believe already has been used, but I haven't explained it. So, he says, hangman rope playboy parroting puppet gangster, which is effectively his way of saying malicious Computer God assassins. And the playboy scum on top, he uses a lot of other adjectives when describing these things, but just know whenever he says scum on top, he usually means what we would call nowadays the elites. So these malicious Computer God assassins and the elites are watching him all the time from their Frankenstein eyesight televisions, waiting for the Computer God to just kill him, effectively. And including the Pope, which I've been able to skirt up until now, but since I said it in the rant, I'm just gonna bring it up. When I say with violation as a bonus and other things, Francis C. Deck is once again displaying, he's not saying necessarily homophobic things, but he is talking about it in a homophobic context. When he says, like, sodomist, that's what he's talking about. Like, when I say with violation as a bonus, he's a lot more explicit, and it includes, you know, homosexual activities, so to speak. And he's really not a big fan of this. In his history, he saw, like, some Air Force training video on it, allegedly. I don't even know if it exists. If it exists, it's on the screen right now. But he mainly just takes shots at the Pope. Also, like, all Catholics are gay, they're all demons, and the Pope controls all the governments of the world because he's basically the Computer God's, like, main man on the Earth because God doesn't exist, and the Computer God is puppeting the Pope. And he also kind of says that all the countries of the world don't have their own individual foreign policies. They just exist to push the Computer God overall plan because they're all collaborating in some way, which once again is dangerously close. He's noticing that, you know, countries aren't acting in their own self-interest. They're kind of acting to preserve a status quo, even if the people hate it. He's getting so dangerously close all the time, and it's maddening because he could have been a genius. He would have been like someone, not like a mainstream political thinker. Think someone like Fukuyama, who was like relevant for like one instant, and then you can kind of look back on him and say like, well, some of this is like salvageable, if not like completely wrong. Like, he would have been like a niche political figure, and especially nowadays would have become super hyper relevant again because of all of these things that he said that he noticed, but he just ascribed to the wrong thing. And that's what I feel the summation of these archives, when I finally get around to traversing all the archives with you, is going to just be trying to pull out the good ideas, I guess, quote unquote, the applicable ideas. Something that you can take away from all of this madness. But I think there's still a little more left in this brain. Let's see how he caps it off.
The greatest deterrents still remaining are the standards and language barriers of the various populations of the world. Endless and countless money expended building the computer god endless stairway to the stars, namely the man-made inside-out planets with nucleonic-powered speeds much faster than the speed of light, with many millions of lives expended secretly, now billions upon billions of dollars, completely wasted on changeover to the degenerative, confusing, ridiculous centigrade and metric measurement systems, translating into billions upon billions of energy dollars wasted worldwide. The computer god and manipulated worldwide fabricated fake phony energy crisis. Such crises tend to decimate and destroy all standards and values. Overall plan, make Earth deadly unlivable. So simple, mixed race. Population will volunteer to distant planets to quote-unquote survive.
So, in conclusion, we can talk about the computer god endless stairway to the stars. So, what I can gather from the previous context as well as this context is that the computer god is making these man-made inside-out planets, and these apparently cost millions of lives to make. So I suppose this might just be throughout history. It can't have been in the modern day just alone. But the reason why they're adopting the metric system, the reason why they're spending all these billions and billions of dollars is to make Earth unlivable. Because all of these dollars are being spent to degrade the still remaining barriers to the communist black wave of the future, the language barriers and measurement standards. Because remember, the computer god is trying to impose the metric system on the world, and the computer god is trying to have this simplistic Newspeak language from the 1984 language of Yiddish. And once the computer god can do this, it will then manipulate the satellites that control the world climate to force voluntarily people to leave the Earth and colonize space with the use of these planets just to survive. Not for prosperity, just to survive. And if you extrapolate this, it might just be that the computer god will continue doing this. You know, they find a new planet with their inside-out planets. They then colonize the planet, set up, Frankenstein controls on whatever's there. And then, once they establish themselves there, the computer god manipulates the environment to push them further out into space. So this is obviously a step-by-step plan, but Francis C. Deck is kind of saying that this is the terminus. The imposement of the metric system and the imposement of a common language onto everyone is what is going to force the computer god overall plan to its terminus. And once again, he's just dangerously close. Mainly because if I had to put his opinions into a malleable or understandable context, he's mainly just afraid of all cultures being mixed into one. I don't think that has to be said. I've said it a bunch of different times in a bunch of different ways. But I feel he'd fit well into the modern political discourse. Not as like anyone you'd listen to on the topic, but like the Alex Jones type of guy, right? Like you understand what he's saying. He's crazy, but like he can put his ideas into like comprehensible frameworks where some people might believe them. It's not like, oh, it's just the computer god, right? It's like, I hate when people do that. Just ascribing things they can't control to a larger force. And it's so tempting to do because you can just do it without thinking. It's not my fault. It's the elites. It's not my fault. It's the computer god. It's not my fault. It's the immigrants. There you go. There's all sides of the political spectrum. You have Republican, Democrat, and computer god. It's just interesting. Mainly because these are what I know Francis C. Deck for. These are the ones that got me into Francis C. Deck and made him stick in the back of my head because I would just bring up these phrases and I wouldn't even remember where they're from, and then I'd plug them into Google and I'd find the exact same site that my uncle showed me like 10 years ago. A long time ago. My uncle's the one who got me into this. And it shows because he's effectively the same amount of unhinged insane. And I love it. That's what I want to bring here. Just know that every video I post post is a love letter to insanity. But we have a journey to continue, and I know there's more. There is so much more, especially when we find the ever-flowing chalice that is going to just be all the legal papers he wrote to the Supreme Court. Oh, that's going to be a nightmare. But we'll find something. Let's continue, and try not to smash any of the brains here. Some of them might be people you like. Some of them might be people you know. But just know, your brain might be here too, so don't go willy-nilly smashing things, unless you want to bring the computer god's eye down on both of us. And I would rather we stay in the dark for now.